Hello everyone, so today we are going to discuss the day 5 of the IELTS online series and we are going to talk about the writing section. In today's class, we'll be talking about the next question type, which is a line graph. I hope that you guys have watched the day 4 of this series where I talked about all the foundations that you need to know to be able to do other question types of the writing section. So please make sure that you have watched the day 4 of this series before watching the day 5, in which was also the first class for the writing section. So let us begin. So this is a sample question for the writing academic task 2 line graph question. Now, as I have already mentioned, before we dive into doing the question, we need to make sure that we understand the question and we should be able to take notes. So now I did discuss about how to take notes in this question. So the first thing that we are going to do is try to understand the context of the question and identify the question type. So in this case, the question that we have is a line graph. Then we are going to read the heading of the question and try to see what are the major components. So in this case, the graph below shows the consumption of 3 spreads from 1981 to 2007. So it's talking about consumption of 3 spreads, and we should be able to paraphrase it or try to understand this in our own words. So one way of paraphrasing is you can change the major keyword from the noun form to a verb form. For instance, in this case, amount consumed, amount of spreads consumed, right? So this is a way you can paraphrase, because I'm converting the noun form into a verb form, consumed, and this can be a very easy way of paraphrasing the question given. Now let us note the key components as well. So the question talks about 3 spreads, which are margarine, butter, and low fat and reduced spreads. Right? So these are the three major key components, key ideas of the question. Also, another key component is the time period, 1981 to 2007. Now, if you did watch the previous video, you saw that there was only a point of time, which was 2010, whereas in this case we have a period of time. Now, this is something that you should take a note of. Apart from that, and you should also realize that this is a time period of 26 years, right? So this can also allow you to rephrase the statements that have been given in the question in your essay. Now, another thing that we are going to do is, as we have already noted down that this figure is based on a period of time, we are going to look at the increasing and decreasing trends. Now, in this case, especially in a line graph, what you can do is take the first and the last point as points of reference for you to be able to figure out what trends they are following. Now, if you see in the year 1981, butter was the most consumed spread, and it has fallen down, right? And it has gradually fallen down. So you can say butter, and along with that, margarine was also consumed at a good amount of level, and this has also fluctuated, and by the end of the period this has also fallen down, right? So overall, butter and margarine has decreased, right? Whereas the consumption of low fat has increased, because overall it started at a very low point, but by the end of the period its consumption is the highest, right? Now this is something that you should be able to do before you start writing your essay. Now there is also another perspective that can be used to make notes. So another thing that you can do to make notes is also look at the highest and least points, right? Now, By the year 1991, the highest consumption was of butter. Yes. After which, by 2001, the highest consumption is of margarine. And after from 2001 to 2007, the highest consumption is of low fat and reduced spreads, right? So this is also another perspective for you to take notes, and this is how you can also mention this information in your overview. Apart from that, we also talked about grouping similar trends, right? So being able to group will allow us to divide our body paragraph and decide what are we going to write in which paragraph. Since we are going to write two body paragraphs, we should know beforehand what content is going to go in the first paragraph and what content is going to go in the second. Now for that, let us group similar trends. In this case, butter and margarine shows an increasing trend, whereas low fat shows a decreasing trend. Now this could be a very straightforward of grouping information and dividing your body paragraphs. All right, so this was all about making notes. Before we move on, there is one another thing that we can do is also note any significant or noticeable features, right? So is there anything that you know takes your attention in this figure? So one thing that actually I notice is the fact that both butter and margarine actually started from the initial period, whereas low fat and reduced spreads was just introduced in 1996. So this is one noticeable feature that I can mention in my overview. Apart from that, there are other noticeable features as well, which is in certain durations, in certain points of time, the consumption of butter and margarine is same, or the consumption of butter, margarine and low fat is same at certain points, right? So you can also note down those if you want to, but again, since we only have a word count of 150 words, because we already have devised a lot of notes, we don't need to take a lot of notes. All right, so let us move on. Now for this question, now since we have taken the notes, let us write the introduction. This is the structure of the introduction that we have already discussed, and you should follow the same structure to write the introduction for this question as well. Now in this case, the line graph illustrates. Now here in the previous question I had used another verb, but you can choose to use verb or not. The given line graph, the shown line graph, the presented line graph, or just the line graph, both would be fine. The line graph illustrates amount of three kinds of spreads, which are margarine, low fat and reduced spreads, and butter, consumed over 26 years, right? So that is what the figure shows. Now you can see that I have paraphrased the question. I'm not using the exact heading that was given in the question. The data from 1981 to 2007 is shown in the figure and the units are measured in grams. Now these are a few components which you must present in your introduction, as we have already discussed. So you should mention the key elements, which is the three different kinds of spread and the time period, along with the unit of measurement, right? If you're able to do this by rephrasing the topic of the question, you should be able to write a clear introduction for your essay. Now let us, before jumping on to looking at the overview for this question, I will just quickly review about the overview. So overview is basically an opening statement for your essay, which mentions the uh, significant trends, changes, developments, traces, and noticeable features. As to be very straightforward with this, what you can do is, if the figure is based on a point of time, you can mention the highest or lowest data points. If the figure is based on a period of time, you can mention the increasing or decreasing trends. In this case, because the figure was based on a period of time, your focus should be on mentioning the increasing or decreasing trends in the overview. Obviously, in a dynamic figure or in a figure that is based on point of time, you can also mention the highest and lowest data points depending on what the context of the figure is. Also, please do not use numbers but rather talk about major highlights in the question. So let us look at the overview for this question. Overall, the consumption of margarine and butter decreased over the period given, while low fat and reduced spreads were consumed more. At the start of the period, butter was the most popular spread, which was replaced by margarine from 1991 to 2001, and followed by that, the low fat and reduced spreads became the most used spread in the final years. Now, these are all the notes that we had made. We said that whether in the duration the consumption has increased or decreased. Apart from that, we also talk about the highest and lowest points in certain in certain periods which has been divided in the question. However, we are not mentioning any data here, so please be careful about that. Moving on to the body paragraph for this question, as I had already mentioned that you should start your body paragraph with a topic statement. So topic statement is basically what are you going to write in your first paragraph. So topic, just like overview is a summary of your entire essay, a topic statement is a summary of your that specific paragraph, right? Now in this case, we said that we grouped information on the basis of similar ideas, and we said that butter and margarine are showing similar trends, so we are going to talk about that in body paragraph 1, whereas low fat and reduced spreads is showing a contrast or an opposite trend, and hence we are going to divide that idea and mention it in our second paragraph. Now while doing this, we should be able to compare, right? So in the first paragraph, when we are talking about margarine and butter, we should be able to compare how has these consumption of these spreads changed over time, and the fact that we are dividing margarine and butter from low fat and reduced spreads, because that is a very clear cut comparison, right? So a change in paragraph is basically a change in idea, and hence this makes complete sense for now. So to talk about the consumption of butter, initially a little more than 140 grams of margarine was consumed in the year 1981. However, after a small hike, this figure gradually dropped to 100 grams in the year 1991 and finally reached to a low of approximately 50 grams by the end of the period. Now, as you can see in this case, I have only mentioned few data points, right? So I have taken 3 data points for the consumption of butter from the line graph. So you don't have to mention all the data points, but you must mention the first and the last data points to show that to prove the fact that okay, the purchase has decreased or increased, right? Similarly, for margarine as well, as the trend has been same, I have mentioned a phrase which shows that I'm comparing, right? A similar phenomenon is observed in the consumption of butter, as it was, um, sorry, it's margarine probably. Okay, so it was my mistake. So the data that I have presented is for butter and not for margarine. So now let us talk about margarine. A similar phenomenon is observed in the consumption of margarine, as it was recorded to be used at around 90 grams in the early 1980s and followed by a fluctuation. By the end of the period, butter is the lowest consumed spread, amounting only at 40 grams. So again, I'm ensuring that the first and last data points are mentioned, and I have not taken any other data point from the question. Moving on to the second paragraph, now we are going to talk about the remaining spread, which is low fat and reduced spreads. Again, I mentioned a topic statement. In contrast to butter and margarine, consumption of low fat and reduced spreads increased drastically. This spread was introduced in the mid 1990s and the consumption started at below 20 grams. This amount then shot up, reaching a consumption of around 80 grams in the year 2001 and becoming the most used spread at 70 grams by the end of the period in 2007. So in this case also I have taken 3 data points showing the complete transition of how the consumption has changed over time, right? Now this is all about writing the essay for a line graph question type. Now there are a few things that you should be very careful in a line graph question, as we have discussed. Please make sure that you are showing the complete picture, not just mention data and that shows the half transition or half development of how the data has changed in the given time period. And if you're able to do that, you should be good enough. You have written good enough to get a decent score. Now let us talk about the writing task assessment criteria. Um, the fact that I'm talking about this now is because now you already know, the structure of the essay and what to write in the essay. But this task assessment criteria will allow you to know what are the things that you should be really careful about and how do you ensure that you get a decent score. Now, there are four major headings for the assessment, which are task achievement. The first one is task achievement. So task achievement ले के भन्छ भन्दाखेरि क्वेसनले जे क्वेसन सोधेको छ त्यसको एन्सर चाहिँ दिनु पर्यो होइन. अब टास्क 1 मा तपाईँले एउटा फिगर दिएर यो फिगरको चाहिँ 150 वर्ड काउन्ट लेखेर तपाईँले 100 वर्ड्स मात्र लेख्नु भयो भने चाहिँ तपाईँको टास्क अचिभमेन्टमा चाहिँ तपाईँको स्कोर कम आउँछ, राइट. अनि इच असेसमेन्टको चाहिँ तपाईँको 9 मा स्कोरिङ हुन्छ, राइट. So let's say if you are writing just 100 words except for 150 words, probably you'll get something that is below 6, right? Because you are not fulfilling the task that has been given to you for this specific category. Task achievement there, if you actually go and look at the rubric for for each task, you can find very detailed information on why would somebody get a band 5 or why would get a band 6 or why would you get a band 8 and so on and so on under these categories. So please feel free to explore those rubrics as well. But just to summarize all of those, these are the basic things that you should be able to do to at least get a 6 in your writing task. So for task achievement, please make sure that you're writing an introduction, writing an overview, and you're supporting your key features with data demonstrated in the given figure, right? Describe the key features in the visual diagram. Use data from the visual diagram to support each key feature. Example, numbers, percentage, building structures, and rooms, right? Now, this is what we have been doing so far. We wrote an introduction, we wrote an overview, and after saying that, hey, the consumption has increased or decreased, in the body paragraphs, we are providing our data to prove that how the consumption have increased or decreased, right? So this is the basic thing that you need to do. You just need to answer what the question is asking you to do. Now let us move on to next criteria for assessment, which is coherence and cohesion. So coherence भनेको के हो भन्दाखेरि it is basically the flow of your ideas, right? You should not be haphazardly presenting your ideas in the essay. For example, let's say if somebody asks you to introduce yourself, you would not randomly start saying that, hey, I work here, and then you'll not move on to your address, and then you'll not mention your name at the end, right? You'll start with your name, then you'll say how old are you probably, then you'll mention your location, then you'll mention, okay, what do you do, right? There is a coherence to how you introduce yourself to other people. Similarly, in this case as well, you should be able to maintain a flow of ideas. Meaning, अब अघिकै क्वेसनको कुरा गर्ने हो लाइन ग्राफमा भने चाहिँ बटरको बारेमा कुरा गर्दाखेरि मैले बटरको कम्प्लिट गरिसकेपछि बल्ल मार्जिनको कुरा स्टार्ट गरेँ होइन, किनभने मैले सुरुमै त्यसरी नै आफ्नो कन्टेक्स्ट सेट गरेको थिएँ. सो इन्स्टेड अफ जम्पिङ हाफजार्डली बिट्विन डिफ्रेन्ट आइडियाज, प्लिज मेक स्योर द्याट एउटा आइडिया भनिसकेपछि तपाईँलाई कम्प्लिट गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ र त्यो आइडियालाई चाहिँ तपाईँले कोहेजिभ डिभाइसेस भनेको कोहेजन युज गरेर चाहिँ तपाईँले अर्को आइडियामा सिफ्ट हुनु पर्यो होइन. अब कोहेजिभ डिभाइसेस भनेको के हो, विल लुक एट द्याट एज वेल. जस्ट टु बी क्विक, कोहेजन भनेको चाहिँ तपाईँको युज अफ कोहेजिभ डिभाइसेस सच एज वेयर एज, फर्दर मोर, मोर ओभर, सिमिलरली होइन, अघि मैले इन अ सिमिलर फेनोमेनन. सो दिज आर सम फ्रेजेस विच सोज कनेक्सन बिट्विन योर आइडियाज, राइट? So this is a very important criteria of your scoring as well. So please make sure that तपाईँको haphazard presentation of ideas चाहिँ छैन. And if you are able to do if you are able to even use basic connectors such as and, but, that will also be fine for you to get a score of at least 6. Moving on to next criteria, which is grammatical range and accuracy. I recommend a lot of students that if you have grammatical issues or if you have foundational issues of grammar, just use simple tense, right? Simple past tense use गरे भयो, किनभने अहिलेसम्म हामीले जति पनि क्वेसनहरू युज गर्यौँ त्यो सबैमा चाहिँ डेटाहरू सबै पास्टकै डेटा थियो. सो वी नो द्याट पास्टको, सो वी आर जस्ट गोइङ टु युज सिम्पल पास्ट टेन्स. अ लट अफ पिपल युज पास्ट पर्फेक्ट टेन्स, but they don't know why are they using the past perfect tense, right? कुनै कुनै केसमा तपाईँको फ्युचरको डेटाहरू पनि दिएको हुन्छ, त्यो केसमा चाहिँ फ्युचर टेन्स युज गर्न सक्नु पर्यो. Along with that, our grammatical range and accuracy, if you're just using correct grammar, you will be able to get a score of 6. But if you want to improve your score, you want to target a 8 or a 8.5 in writing, then in that case you need to show a range of grammar, right? Meaning depending on the context, present perfect tense अथवा present perfect continuous tense similarly in past and future as well, होइन त्यस्तो रेन्ज चाहिँ तपाईँले डिस्प्ले चाहिँ गर्न सक्नु पर्छ, along with different kind of sentence structures, होइन. अब सेन्टेन्स स्ट्रक्चरमा पनि तपाईँको सिम्पल सेन्टेन्स स्ट्रक्चर हुन्छ, कम्प्लेक्स सेन्टेन्स स्ट्रक्चर हुन्छ. सो त्यो कम्प्लेक्स सेन्टेन्स स्ट्रक्चरहरू चाहिँ डिस्प्ले गर्नुभयो भने चाहिँ तपाईँको स्कोर चाहिँ राइज हुने हो फर दिस स्पेसिफिक क्राइटेरिया. एन्ड द फाइनल वान इज लेक्सिकल रिसोर्सेस. लेक्सिकल रिसोर्सेस भनेको तपाईँले लेख्दाखेरि कतिको वर्ड्सहरू सेम वर्ड्सहरू रिपिट गर्नु भइरहेछ, अथवा तपाईँले भोकाबुलरी रेलिभेन्ट भोकाबुलरीहरू युज गर्नु भइरहेछ कि छैन, होइन. अब लेक्सिकल रिसोर्सेस टास्क 1 भन्दा पनि टास्क 2 माइट मेक्स अ लट अफ सेन्स, but for now you should be able to not repeat. For task 1 you should not repeat the same words over and over, you should not repeat the same sentence structure over and over. How fluent your writing is and how easy it is for the reader to understand what you have written, right? Now these are few things that will allow you, that will help you to get a score of at least 6 in writing. So you चाहिँ मिनिमम पनि तपाईँले अचिभ गर्नुहुन्छ भने obviously जसरी जसरी तपाईँले यो सबै मा इम्प्रुभ गर्दै जानुहुन्छ तपाईँको स्कोर पनि इम्प्रुभ हुन्छ, एन्ड यु क्यान टार्गेट अप टु 7.5 to 8 in writing. Now, so in this class, I'll be particularly talking about the cohesive devices. So these are few cohesive devices, at least these that you should use in your writing. The first one that I'll start with is furthermore. Furthermore भनेको के हो भन्दाखेरि it allows you to provide additional support and also allows you to add a fresh argument in whatever you are saying. So I have also mentioned examples here. For example, international sports events are a contributor to peace. So this is my first main idea. So now to elaborate this idea, I'm using the context furthermore. These events also support the prosperity of developing nations by promoting tourism and generating employment opportunities, right? So international sports events एउटा कन्ट्रिब्युटर मात्र नभएर उसले चाहिँ prosperity of developing nations पनि गर्ने रहेछ. So both of these ideas are very relevant. Now you can also consider the second statement as a new consideration or of elaboration of the same argument, the first statement that has been mentioned here. There are synonyms or other connectors as well which do the same thing, which is moreover additionally in addition to along with that, right? So you don't have to repeat the word furthermore over and over, but you can choose to play or switch between these words that has been mentioned here. The next one is whereas. अब whereas सबैले युज गरिरहेको गरि नै गर्नु नै हुन्छ, होइन, आफ्नो डेली लाइफ्सहरूमा पनि युज गर्नुहुन्छ. Now whereas is used to show difference in ideas, opposite ideas अथवा contrasting ideas को बेलामा चाहिँ हामीले whereas use गर्ने हो. अब यहाँ फेरि examples दिएको छ. So whereas use गर्ने बेला you can choose to use whereas in the beginning of the statement as well, or between the statements as well, when you are presenting differing ideas. So let us see how. If we see in the example 1, whereas the writing task 1 of the IELTS exam requires students to write an essay of 150 words, students should write only 250 words for the IELTS writing task 2. So this is something, it's not contrasting ideas, but it's just different ideas, right? So एउटामा 150 words लेख्नु पर्छ र अर्कोमा 250, right? So त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा पनि तपाईँले whereas चाहिँ युज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. Now let us see an example of differing ideas. Contrasting ideas. In the year 2023, the number of tourists visiting Nepal increased, whereas the number of Nepalese who visited abroad for vacations decreased in the same year. So अब यहाँ contrast कसरी भयो त? Increase or decrease, होइन? So these are opposite ideas. Now in this case, we are using the connector whereas again. Similar words that you can use for whereas are in contrary to, while on the contrary, when in fact, right? So these are few words which has the same function of the word whereas. The next one is meanwhile. Meanwhile is used to talk about a time period until something expected happens or to express something that is occurring in the same period of time. So दुवै instance को लागि चाहिँ मैले यहाँ example दिएको छु. For example, um, we will buy a few shorts for you by the end of the weekend. Meanwhile, you will just have to wear your long trousers. So जबसम्म हामी त्यो shorts किन्दैनौँ तबसम्म चाहिँ so you should also be able to translate your English structures into the Nepali language to be able to better understand the correct uses of such connectors. The second example is you can prepare for your IELTS exam. Meanwhile, we can shortlist a few US universities to save you some time. So यो भनेको while so एउटा काम भइरहेको छ प्यारलली हामी अर्को काम पनि गर्छौँ सो त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा पनि हामीले meanwhile युज गर्न सक्छौँ right. Some similar words are while, in the meantime, at the time, in the course of, right. Now these are things that you can switch to as well. The final cohesive device that we can talk about in today's class is even though, although, despite. Now these words also have the similar function to what the function of the word whereas was. However, whereas चाहिँ differing ideas मा पनि use गर्न सकिन्छ भने यो वर्ड्सहरू चाहिँ तपाईले कन्ट्रास्टिङ आइडियाजमा मात्र युज गर्न पाउनुहुन्छ, डिफरिङ आइडियाजमा चाहिँ युज गर्न सक्नुहुन्न. र यो वर्ड्सहरूले चाहिँ एउटा सर्टेन स्ट्रक्चर चाहिँ फलो गर्छ विच यु क्यान सी हियर. स्ट्रक्चर अफ अब यो वर्ड्सहरूलाई सब अर्डिनेटिङ कन्जङ्सन पनि भनिन्छ र सब अर्डिनेटिङ कन्जङ्सन लगाउने बित्तिकै यु निड टु फलो द स्ट्रक्चर अफ अ डिपेन्डेन्ट क्लज प्लस कमा प्लस इन्डिपेन्डेन्ट क्लज, राइट. सो आई हेभ गिभन इक्जाम्पल्स हियर फर इच वर्ड. So let us see them. Despite so many hurdles, which is a conjunction, this is our dependent sentence, and comma, this is our independent sentence, right? But dependent or independent sentence is something which you can find on the internet, and it's pretty much straightforward as well. So please have a look on, if you don't know what is a dependent sentence and what is an independent sentence, please have a look at that as well. Despite so many hurdles, she was able to clear her CA exams with excellent scores. So this is a perfect example of using the word despite. Although the sun was shining, it rained in the evening. So we are showing contrasting ideas, right? So even though sun was on, pani परिरहेको थियो हैन. So यो चाहिँ opposite. Pani र sun are apparently opposite ideas. So we can use although to do that. Even though the economy is strong, the policymakers and economists are skeptical about decreasing interest rates. So economy strong हुँदा हुँदा पनि interest rate किन बढिरहेको छ. So यो पनि contrasting ideas भएको कारणले गर्दा we have used the word even though plus dependent sentence plus an independent sentence. Now this is how you should be able to use these cohesive ideas in your writing. Especially because तपाईलाई एउटा statistical figure मा चाहिँ compare गर्न भन्छ. So त्यो केसमा चाहिँ these kinds of connectors can help you to increase your score in the writing section. Alright guys, so that should be it for the writing class for today, and in tomorrow's class we'll talk about other question types for academic task 1 and other vocabularies that you can use for the general words that you are using, such as increase, decrease, and so on. So I'll see you guys in next class. Thank you.